When I was 15, my mom dropped me off at a shelter with a trash bag full of clothes and told me to figure it out. That was her parting advice. No hug, no goodbye, just the slam of the car door and the image of her taillights disappearing down the road. I stood there holding that crumpled bag, half of it already ripped at the seam, while the December wind cut through my jacket like it had a personal vendetta against me. I spent that Christmas in a group home watching other kids open donated gifts. I didn't get one. They'd run out. I remember staring at the bottom of a styrofoam cup filled with watered-down cocoa, wondering if this was what growing up meant. I haven't seen or heard from her since. Until yesterday. My name's Tyler. I'm 29 now. I've got a decent life, considering where I started. A good job in logistics, a small 2-bedroom rental in the suburbs, and a garage full of half-finished projects I'll probably never complete, but still love tinkering with. I keep to myself mostly. My coworkers think I'm the chill guy, but they don't know the half of it. I don't tell people about my mom. I don't talk about the shelter. It's easier that way. Yesterday afternoon, I was just getting home from work. I had my keys in one hand and a grocery bag with a frozen pizza and cat litter in the other. My cat, Rocket, was meowing from inside like I was late by 5 years. I just stepped onto the porch when I noticed him, a man, probably mid-50s, standing by the walkway like he'd been waiting. He had a nervous energy, kept shifting his weight, and when he finally looked up and made eye contact with me, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You Tyler?" he asked, voice dry like he didn't use it much. "Yeah," I said slowly. I didn't recognize him. He didn't explain, just reached into his coat pocket and handed me an envelope. I remember pausing, looking at it like it might explode. The handwriting on the front hit me like a sucker punch. Slanted cursive. Neat. Too neat. I hadn't seen that handwriting since I was a kid, signing permission slips for field trips I never got to go on. "Who gave you this?" I asked. "She said you'd know," he replied. Then, like he had a bus to catch or a crime to flee from, he turned around and walked off. I didn't open the envelope right away. I just stood there for a few seconds, heart hammering, before Rocket's screech from inside reminded me I had responsibilities now. I went in, fed the cat, turned on the kettle, and stared at the envelope on the kitchen counter like it was radioactive. Finally, I cracked it open. Inside was a single piece of paper. No greeting. No apology. Just a sentence. "You're doing well now? Could you help your mother out?" That was it. No return address. No explanation. Just that one sentence in her perfect little cursive, like we'd spoken last week instead of 14 years ago. And just like that, memories I'd buried deep, shoved into some emotional crawlspace, came crawling back like they'd never left. The night she kicked me out. Her screaming about how I was too much. The way she looked at me like I was a burden she never asked for. I tried not to hate her over the years. Some part of me assumed she was dead, that maybe addiction had swallowed her whole, or that she'd just moved on and started a new life. Either way, I'd learned to live without answers. But now she wanted help. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake with the note on my nightstand, turning it over in my mind like a riddle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. Part of me thought it had to be a prank. But the handwriting, there was no denying it. I knew that handwriting the way you know a childhood scar, faint, but permanent. This morning, I called out of work. First time in months. My manager was cool about it. Said I sounded off. I didn't argue. I spent the day pacing my house, wondering what help meant. Money? Shelter? A kidney? Then around noon, I made a mistake. I looked her up. I don't know what I expected. Jail records? An obituary? Instead, I found a Facebook profile. Her name was the same. The photo was recent, maybe a year old. She looked older, obviously. Weathered. Her smile was too wide. The kind of smile someone wears when they know they've got something to sell. Her about section was practically a novel, filled with pseudo-spiritual nonsense and inspirational quotes from people she definitely never read. And then I saw it. A post from 2 weeks ago. When life falls apart, sometimes it's the children we once let go of who come back to lift us up. Praying for a miracle. I stared at that post for a full 5 minutes before closing the tab. She was fishing. She wasn't sorry. She was setting the stage. What's worse is that people were commenting. Strangers. Saying things like, "Stay strong, mama," and "Your son is lucky to have a mother like you." One woman even offered to start a GoFundMe. I felt sick. She was playing the victim. No mention of the shelter. No mention of the trash bag. Just the image of a poor, struggling mother who let go of her son out of love or necessity and was now hoping for reconciliation. I didn't know what to do with the anger. It had been so long since I'd felt that 13-year-old version of myself clawing his way back up to the surface, begging to be seen. And just as I was trying to convince myself to let it go, to rip the note and toss it in the trash, my doorbell rang again. Another knock. This time, it wasn't a man. It was her. She was standing on my porch like she had every right to be there. Like this was her house. Like she hadn't abandoned me halfway through puberty and disappeared off the face of the earth. I didn't open the door right away. I just stared through the peephole, frozen. Her hair was dyed, poorly, blonde, with roots showing. Her coat looked expensive, though. Designer. And she was wearing heels. Heels. Like she was going to brunch. She rang the bell again. Tyler, I know you're in there, she called out sing-songy. Can we talk? Talk. 14 years of silence. And now she wanted to talk? I opened the door halfway. Just enough for her to see my face, but not enough to step inside. She smiled like she was meeting an old friend. There you are? Gosh, look at you. So grown up. I didn't smile back. Why are you here? Her face dropped a little. Just a flicker. Then she stepped into character again. Look, I know this is a lot, but I've been going through something, and, well, you've done so well for yourself. I thought, maybe we could reconnect. You know, family. Family. I repeated, barely keeping the edge out of my voice. Come on, don't be like that, she said, already peering past me into the house like she was casing the place. It's been a long time, I know, but people change. Life happens. I didn't say anything. I just let the silence sit. She took it as an invitation. I'm staying nearby, she continued. Just for a bit. Maybe we could have dinner? Catch up. I can explain everything. I crossed my arms. Explain what? That you left me at a shelter without looking back. Her smile faltered again, this time for longer. Tyler, I did what I had to do. You don't know how hard things were back then. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Yeah, I do. I lived it. Her eyes narrowed for a second, just a second. And in that flicker of a moment, I saw the truth. She hadn't come here for forgiveness. She hadn't come here to reconnect. She came because she needed something. But I didn't know what yet. And I had a feeling she wasn't going to leave until she got it. So I stepped aside and said, fine, come in. Because if this was going to turn into a war, I wanted to know exactly what battlefield I was standing on. And I was done playing the quiet kid. She stepped inside like she owned the place. I remember the sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, how she scanned the living room like she was appraising it. Her eyes lingered on the couch, the TV, the framed photo of Rocket on the mantel, everything except me. I closed the door behind her, slower than necessary, trying to wrap my head around the fact that this woman, my mother, was standing in my house as if she hadn't vanished off the face of the earth for over a decade. You've done well for yourself, she said, walking into the kitchen uninvited. Much better than I expected, to be honest. I always said you were the smart one. I didn't respond. I just watched her open my fridge like it was hers. She helped herself to a bottle of water, cracked it open, took a long sip, and finally turned to face me. So, she said, leaning against the counter, are you seeing anyone? Mary. I raised an eyebrow. Is that really why you're here? She gave me this little shrug, like don't be so dramatic, and smiled again. Can't a mother be curious about her only son? That word, mother, felt like a splinter under my skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her where the hell she'd been on my graduation day, when I moved into my first apartment, when I got promoted. I wanted to show her the scar on my arm from that one night in the shelter when a kid smashed a broken chair leg into my bicep because I got the last carton of milk. I wanted to ask her if she ever thought about me during any of those years. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I asked why now. She blinked. Why what? Why are you reaching out now? After 14 years of silence. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Hesitation? But it vanished just as quickly. She sighed and set the bottle down on the counter like she was getting ready to perform. Look, she began. Things haven't been easy for me either. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. Got into a bad situation. I never meant to hurt you, Tyler. I was overwhelmed. I was broke. You were difficult. Always asking questions. Always needing things I couldn't give. I stared at her. I was 15. She flinched, barely. You were supposed to be the one who gave, not the one who walked away. Her smile vanished completely now. Do you think it was easy for me? Raising you alone after your father bailed? Do you know what I gave up to keep us afloat? My jaw tightened. I know what you gave up. Me. There it was. That flash of anger behind her eyes. She didn't like being called out. She never had. Don't guilt me, she said sharply. You don't know the whole story. No, I said. Then tell me. Tell me why you never wrote. Never called. Never asked if I was alive. She walked past me into the living room and sat on the couch, crossing her legs like she lived here. I figured you were better off. You're independent. Resourceful. Look at you. You didn't need me. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. But now you need me? There was silence for a beat too long. Then she looked up with that same smile she wore in her Facebook photo, the kind of smile that belonged to a con artist. I'm in a bit of a financial bind, she said. I was hoping you could help. There it was. The real reason. Like a spider inching out of a crack in the wall. I figured that's where this was going, I said quietly. How much? She sat up straighter, smoothed her skirt. It's complicated. I got involved with this guy, Todd, real estate investor. Big dreams, big promises. We were building something, but then he bailed. Left me holding everything. I've got debt collectors breathing down my neck. I'm 3 months behind on rent. I just need a little help to get back on my feet. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how on brand it was. She walked out on me in the middle of winter with nothing but a trash bag of clothes. But now she wanted me to save her from her bad decisions? Tyler, she said, voice softening. You're doing well now. You have a house. A job. You're not struggling like I am. I shook my head slowly. No, I struggled. You just weren't there to see it. She frowned like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Don't be like that. I'm your mother. That word again. I've got to go, I said. I've got plans. She looked surprised. It's only 4 in the afternoon. Still, I'm busy. She stared at me like she was trying to decide whether to guilt trip me or explode. Then, with a forced laugh, she stood. All right, I'll go. But we're not done talking. I'll come by tomorrow. I never said that was okay. You didn't have to, she said breezily, already walking to the door. Family doesn't need permission. And just like that, she was gone. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat in the garage, half working on an old engine I wasn't even sure ran anymore. My head was spinning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw 15-year-old me huddled in a bunk bed under a thin blanket while some other kid cried in the corner. I remembered how I used to pray she'd change her mind. How I kept checking the shelter's sign-in list to see if anyone had asked for me. She never did. But now that I had something she could use, I was suddenly family again. The next day, she came back. This time with someone. A woman in her early 20s with long dark hair and a high ponytail. She looked annoyed to be there. Didn't even try to smile. Tyler, my mother said brightly. I want you to meet your sister. I blinked. My what? Half-sister, she clarified. This is Kayla. She's 21. I did the math in my head. That meant Mom had her just 3 years after abandoning me. Kayla looked me up and down like she was judging the resale value of my hoodie. Cool place, she said flatly. Could use better lighting. I stared at them both. Why are you really here? Mom sighed. Look, Tyler, I didn't want to drop all this on you at once, but Kayla's also going through a tough time. She just lost her job and needs a place to stay for a bit. Just until she finds her footing. No, you have a second bedroom, she pointed out, like that was supposed to mean something. I laughed. You mean the room I turned into a home office? For the job I worked so I don't end up begging my estranged son for handouts. Kayla folded her arms. You don't have to be a jerk about it. I turned to her. You don't even know me. And you don't know me, she snapped. But maybe if you weren't so bitter, you'd see we're not the enemy here. I stared at my mother. She knew about me? My mother shrugged. I told her about you recently. She was curious. No, I said. She knew I existed while I was sleeping in group homes, and you were raising her in a house somewhere, weren't you? Kayla looked a little uneasy now. I did what I had to, Mom said. Kayla's father stuck around. We had a better situation. It's not like I could go back for you. I felt like the room tilted. All this time, I thought maybe she'd spiraled. Lost control. Been unable to find me. But no, she just didn't want to. She picked her. You need to leave, I said. Tyler, be reasonable, she said. You have no idea how hard it's been for us. Us? I asked. There is no us. Kayla muttered something under her breath, and my mother shot her a look. What did you say? I asked. Nothing, Kayla said. Just that you're being dramatic. Like, get over it. People have hard childhoods all the time. That did it. I stepped forward, voice low. Get out. Mom huffed. You're making a mistake. No, I said, opening the door. I made a mistake letting you in. Kayla rolled her eyes as she walked out. Whatever. Mom paused in the doorway. You'll regret this, Tyler. I've regretted a lot of things, I said. But this won't be one of them. She left. I locked the door behind her. The house was quiet again. Rocket came out from wherever he'd been hiding and rubbed against my leg like he knew I needed it. That night, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened to the message. It was my mother, and what she said made my blood run cold. I didn't want to do this, Tyler. But you leave me no choice. If you're not going to help willingly, then maybe your company would like to know what kind of person they're really employing. You've got a nice life. It'd be a shame if you lost it. That's when I realized. This wasn't a family reunion. This was extortion, and it was just getting started. I didn't play the voicemail more than once. I didn't have to. Every word was burned into my mind like someone had branded it there. My mother's voice, soft, almost gentle, paired with a threat that felt so familiar it made something deep inside me twist. It was the same tone she used when I was a kid, and she wanted something out of me. The same tone she used the night she told me I was too much. The same tone she used when she drove me to the shelter and said, "You'll be fine, Tyler. You always are." That night, I didn't feel fine. I paced the living room until the carpet practically had a path worn into it, replaying everything in my head, wondering how far she'd go, wondering why she thought I still had anything left to give her after the childhood she'd handed me. If she was willing to show up at my house uninvited, bring her surprised daughter like a prop, and then escalate straight to threats, what came next? The answer came the following morning. I woke up to 20 missed calls, not just from unknown numbers, but from work. My manager, 2 coworkers, and even HR. My stomach dropped. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the notifications with Rocket curled against my thigh like a living stress ball. The voicemail from HR was short and tight, the way people sound when they're trying not to panic. Tyler, we need to speak with you immediately. It's urgent. Please call back as soon as possible. My chest tightened. I called back. They answered on the first ring. Tyler, hi. Thanks for returning our call. We received several concerning messages this morning. My heart hammered. From who? There was a pause, too deliberate. A woman claiming to be your mother. Of course. The HR rep cleared his throat. She stated that you've been violent, unstable, and that she was concerned for the safety of your coworkers. She also mentioned something about you having anger problems and suggested we review your employment. I closed my eyes. Of all the lies she could tell, she went straight for the ones that could destroy everything I'd spent years building. None of that is true, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I figured as much, he replied. But we have protocols. We'll need you to come in for a formal conversation. My throat felt tight. Okay, I understand. We're not accusing you of anything, Tyler, he added quickly. This just needs to be documented. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, palms pressed to my eyes until I saw colors. I felt something break inside me, not loudly, but quietly, like a seam finally giving out after years of pressure. I knew that no matter what I told HR, no matter how much evidence I had, her words had already planted a seed. And seeds grow. By noon, I was sitting in a small windowless office across from my manager and the HR rep. They both looked uncomfortable. I explained everything, carefully, calmly, without emotion. I told them about her showing up, about the envelope, about the threats. I left out the details I didn't want to relive, but I told them enough that they understood the situation wasn't as simple as a disgruntled relative. They said they understood. They said they believed me. But they also said something that stuck with me. Tyler, until this is resolved, it may be best to take a leave of absence. Just temporarily. For your safety, and ours. I didn't argue. I could see in their eyes that the decision had already been made before I walked into the room. When I left the office building that day, box of personal items in my arms, I felt like I was 15 again, with everything I owned stuffed into a cheap bag, stepping into the cold with no one to call and nowhere to go. Even though I had a house, even though I wasn't the same kid anymore, the feeling wrapped itself around me like a second skin. For the next few days, I barely left the house. I unplugged my landline, blocked every unknown caller on my cell. My mom kept switching numbers, calling, texting, leaving voicemails filled with a nauseating mix of sweet guilt and thinly veiled blackmail. Tyler, sweetheart, I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. Call me back. We need to talk, or else things will get worse. You owe me this. You're being cruel. Your sister is crying. You can fix this. Just help us. Help us. I deleted everything without responding. But the silence didn't mean peace. The silence meant time to think, too much of it. And when you've spent most of your life surviving instead of living, being forced to slow down feels like punishment. Every night, I replayed the moment she left me in that shelter. The way she let the door close without looking back. The way I cried into my pillow because the staff told me there wasn't enough funding for a Christmas meal that year. And now she wanted help? She wanted me to lift her up? There were moments that week when I wondered if she was right. If maybe I did owe her something. If maybe I was selfish for refusing. But then I'd remember her face when I confronted her, how quickly the sweetness vanished, how easily she shifted into threat mode, how natural it was for her to try and destroy my life when I didn't give her what she wanted. Family doesn't do that. Not real family. Toward the end of the week, after too many sleepless nights, something shifted in me. Not suddenly, but subtly, like waking up one morning and realizing the season has changed. I got up, showered, made coffee, and stood in the kitchen staring at Rocket as he sat on the counter like he paid rent. I can't stay like this, I told him. He blinked. Exactly. So I began rebuilding. Not loudly. Not quickly. Just quietly. I started by fixing up the garage. Something productive to pull me out of my head. I reorganized shelves, cleaned tools I hadn't touched in months, stripped an old engine block and rebuilt half of it. The work steadied me in a way I didn't expect. There was something comforting about taking something broken and restoring it piece by piece. Unlike people, engines made sense. They didn't lie. They didn't manipulate. If something didn't work, there was a reason. Within a few days, the garage looked better than it had in years. I felt lighter every time I stepped into it. Next came exercise. I started going for short walks that turned into long walks. Then jogging. Then actual workouts with weights I dusted off from a closet. It wasn't about changing how I looked. It was about proving to myself that I could still move forward, even when everything felt stuck. Then, slowly, I started reaching out to people. Not friends. I didn't have many. But coworkers. The ones who always invited me to lunch, but I'd politely decline because being around people felt exhausting. A few of them texted me after hearing about my leave of absence, asking if everything was okay. I didn't tell them everything, but I didn't isolate myself either. One coworker, Marcus, invited me to help him with a project in his garage. He had an old motorcycle he wanted to restore, but had no idea where to start. I hesitated at first, but then I said yes. The distraction helped. So did the company. I even started therapy, online at first because the idea of sitting in a room talking about my mother felt like peeling off a scab I'd let grow thick over the years. But surprisingly, it didn't hurt as much as I expected. If anything, saying the words out loud made them lose some of their power. Week by week, I felt a shift. Not a transformation, nothing dramatic. More like I was finally reclaiming pieces of myself I didn't know were missing. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't whole. But I was rising. Quietly. Slowly. Steadily. Until the day everything cracked open again. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the garage working on the engine when I heard a car pull into my driveway. I froze. Not because I feared the worst, but because I recognized the sound. A specific rattle in the engine, the uneven hum of tires that needed air. I hadn't heard that car in 14 years. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked toward the front of the house, expecting, hoping, to be wrong. But I wasn't. My mother stepped out of the car, hair tied up, sunglasses perched on her head. And she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before climbed out of the passenger side. Tall, heavy-set, arms covered in faded tattoos. He looked around the property like he was memorizing it. They both started walking toward my front porch. My heart dropped, not from fear, but from the sinking realization that my quiet rebuilding wasn't enough to keep the past from forcing its way back in. She looked different this time. Not polished. Not rehearsed. This wasn't a performance. This was something else. She stopped at the bottom of the steps and called out, "Tyler, open the door. We need to talk." The man beside her cracked his knuckles. And I realized, Whatever she wanted now was going to be much worse than money or pity. Much worse than a guilt trip. Much worse than threats to HR. This was something else entirely. And when I opened that door, because I knew I would, the calm, quiet life I was piecing together was about to collide headfirst with the storm I thought I'd escaped forever. I reached for the doorknob. And that's exactly where everything began to fall apart again. The doorknob was cold under my palm, and for a second, I just stood there, heart thudding slow and heavy in my chest, staring at the outline of my mother and the stranger through the curtain-glassed window. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't angry. Not the hot, impulsive kind of anger either. This was colder. Focused. The kind of fury that doesn't shout. It plans. I opened the door, slow and deliberate. My eyes locked on hers first. Her smile was gone this time. "Tyler," she said, sounding less sure than before. "This is Rick. He's a friend." Rick didn't smile. He didn't offer a handshake. He just looked me up and down like he was sizing me for a casket. I nodded once. "You've got 2 minutes." "Nice to see you too," she muttered, brushing past me without waiting for an invitation. Rick followed her in. I didn't move from the doorway. I wanted them to feel like guests, unwanted guests, every second they were in my space. She looked around like she was seeing the house for the first time. "You've done well for yourself," she said again, but this time it sounded forced. Like a line she'd practiced and didn't believe. "I told you last time," I said flatly. "You're not welcome here." "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious," she said, perching on the edge of the couch. "And I wouldn't have brought Rick unless it was important." Rick crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, saying nothing. I glanced at him. "Is he your muscle now?" My mother didn't flinch. "No. He's the partner. In business. We've been trying to get a new venture off the ground." Oh, there it was. Another pitch. Another scheme. This wasn't about family. It never was. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of water just to give my hands something to do. "So, what's the scam this time?" Her face hardened. "It's not a scam. It's a startup. We've got a line on a commercial property downtown. Prime location. Needs a little work, but once we get it flipped and leased, it'll pay off big." I leaned against the counter. "Let me guess. You want me to invest?" Rick finally spoke. His voice was deep and flat, like gravel being ground under a tire. "Not want. Need." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not a bank." "No," my mom said quickly, "you're not. But your family. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You left me at a shelter." She rolled her eyes, and it made something deep in me snap. Like she was tired of hearing about that. Like I was the problem for not letting it go. Rick stepped forward. "You've got savings. A house. A job. Well, had a job. Be a shame if that got complicated again." My blood ran cold. My mother looked away. There it was. The real play. This wasn't about a business venture. This was blackmail. Again. "How do you even know about my savings?" I asked. She shrugged. "You're not that hard to look up. Found your LinkedIn. Your company bio. Your address." My fingers clenched around the water bottle. Rick smirked. "Don't take it personal. It's just leverage. You've got assets. We need capital. You want us to go away? Easy. You pay." "Pay who?" I asked. "You." My mother's voice was soft. 10,000. That's it. Then we're gone. "Or?" I asked. Rick grinned like he'd been waiting for me to say that. "Or things get messy." And right then, something in me crystallized. This was no longer about surviving her games. This was about ending them. I set the bottle down and nodded slowly. "All right." Rick blinked. "All right." I gave him a calm smile. "I'll give you the 10 grand. But I want something in return." My mom looked suspicious. "What kind of something?" "Sign a contract," I said, "stating you'll cut all contact with me permanently. That you forfeit any claims to my assets, my estate, everything. You'll leave me alone forever. If you break it, I sue." Rick scoffed. "You think we're stupid?" "I think you're greedy," I replied. "And desperate." There was a beat of silence. "I'll draft something," she said. "Tonight." "No need," I replied. "I already have something." Because I had been preparing for this. That voicemail from her, threatening to contact my employer? I hadn't just deleted it. I'd archived it. I'd transcribed it. I'd had it reviewed by a lawyer I knew from Marcus' garage project. Turns out verbal threats tied to blackmail and false accusations are not a good look, especially when documented. And that leave of absence from work? It wasn't permanent. After HR spoke to legal, and I showed them the voicemail and evidence, they apologized. Profusely. I wasn't being let go. I was being protected. They even offered legal support if it escalated. In the week I'd spent rebuilding my routine, I'd also been building something else. A case. I already had the groundwork. I just needed the right moment to finish it. And that moment was now. I've got a lawyer, I told them. He'll have the contract sent over by tomorrow. If you sign it and disappear, I wire the money. If you don't, I leaned in slightly. Then I'll make sure your employer hears about Rick's criminal record. Oh, and Kayla? She doesn't seem like the type who'd enjoy a wellness check from CPS, given what she posted on Facebook last week about watching her friend's baby for cash. My mother's face turned a shade paler. You wouldn't. I already have. I lied. I hadn't. Not yet. But I would. I saw it in her eyes, the first crack in her confidence. And that was all I needed. You tried to ruin my life, I said. Twice. But now I get to decide what happens next. Rick started to say something, but my glare cut him off. You've got 24 hours, I said. Then I go public. Emails. Voicemails. Everything. I know people. Good people. Your schemes won't survive it. They left. Slowly. Quietly. No parting shots this time. My mother didn't even look back. And the second they were gone, I went straight to my laptop. I opened the folder titled Insurance. It was time to finish setting the trap. Because this wasn't about money anymore. This was about making sure she never came back. And I had just the plan to make sure of it. Rick and my mother never signed the contract. I didn't expect them to. They were grifters, seasoned manipulators, not business people. They played with guilt, power, and secrets. Contracts and paper trails weren't part of their game. So when the 24-hour window passed with no word, no signature, and no wire instructions requested, I wasn't surprised. I was ready. Because I hadn't just threatened to go public. I had already started. The first domino fell the next morning. A burner email account, complete with a fake name, masked IP, and encrypted metadata, sent a digital package to every business my mother had posted about on social media. Every investor she tagged. Every Facebook friend who'd commented, "So proud of you, Mama." Her landlord. The commercial real estate page she'd been spamming with fake listings. A carefully worded message, polite but firm, attached to the PDF. You are being contacted regarding a pattern of fraudulent financial behavior associated with Mother's full name and her partner, Rick's full name. Attached is a dossier of evidence including voicemail recordings, transcribed blackmail attempts, Facebook posts soliciting unlicensed investments, a fabricated business license registration flagged as invalid by the local clerk's office, an incident report involving her estranged son and workplace harassment. I didn't sign it. I didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. That same day, I delivered a manila envelope, handwritten, anonymous, to her landlord's office. Inside, hard copies of the same documents, plus photos of the vehicle she'd been using, illegally parked in a private commercial lot with a falsified business decal in the window. I didn't stop there. A second envelope went to the Department of Consumer Protection, another to the local licensing bureau, another to the housing association where Rick had a record of evictions under different names. Each package customized, each one factual, cold, professional, untraceable, because I didn't want revenge that screamed. I wanted revenge that echoed. By the end of the week, I heard through a mutual former coworker, Marcus' cousin, small world, that someone matching Rick's description had gotten into a shouting match with two building inspectors outside a shuttered storefront on Main Street. Apparently, they tried to open some sort of wellness cafe with no permits, no insurance, and no building clearance. The lease was fake. The down payment was forged. The signage was stolen from an old salon. Within 3 days, their business venture had unraveled like wet paper in the rain. But that wasn't even the satisfying part. The satisfying part came later, when I got a letter from the state attorney's office. It was official, formal. They were investigating my mother and Rick for multiple counts of attempted wire fraud, falsification of legal documents, impersonation of a financial officer, and harassment involving coercive threats. Turns out, one of the investors she tried to scam was an undercover financial crimes officer, targeting small-time hustlers running real estate cons in the suburbs. They'd been following leads, unsure where the core of the web was, until my dossier dropped right in their laps. I never had to testify. They never made it that far. Rick was arrested 2 weeks later for an unrelated charge, assault. While in custody, his phone and laptop were confiscated. Contained within, more messages, more voice recordings, details of deals and threats that mirrored what they'd done to me. My mother, slippery as ever, tried to deny everything. But in the world of email chains and call logs, denial only gets you so far. Eventually, she accepted a deal, restitution to the victims in exchange for avoiding jail time. But the restitution required assets, bank accounts, co-signers. She had none. The state garnished what little she had left. Her car was repossessed. Her name was added to an investor fraud watch list that effectively blacklisted her from opening another business account. And Kayla, the half-sister who once rolled her eyes at me in my own living room? Well, she tried to pick up the pieces. But after a viral Facebook post, a very familiar story told from the perspective of an abandoned son started circulating in local groups. Sympathy for her mother dried up. Fast. Kayla reached out to me once more. A message on LinkedIn. I didn't know everything. I'm sorry. She lied to me too. If you ever want to talk. I left it unread. Because by then, I was no longer interested in reuniting with the people who left me behind. I was building something better. My company offered me a full return to work, with a quiet apology and a subtle promotion to a more independent role. They handled the legal side with poise, even offering to pay for part of the lawyer I'd retained for the HR protection. I didn't ask for it. They insisted. And Marcus? He and I became real friends. Garage projects turned into weekend hangouts. I even helped him fix up a vintage '84 Jeep that now sits proudly in his driveway, clean and loud as hell. Therapy got easier. I found words for things I used to bury. I even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but enough to remind myself that some people enter your life not to break it, but to hold it with care. Rocket, my cat, stayed indifferent through all of it, though I swear he started sleeping closer to me at night, like he understood that something heavy had been lifted. I never got another letter. No knock at the door. No stranger with another envelope. Just peace. Unremarkable, everyday, beautiful peace. And as for the trash bag, I still have it, tucked into the back of my closet. The seams are torn. The plastic is brittle. But it's a reminder, not of where I came from, but of everything I refuse to become. And that is the last thing I'll ever carry from her.